This quarantine is a wreck. How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Hopefully you're having a good, relaxing day, slash night, slash weekend, slash weekday. When you record for most of the fucking week, you lose all the attempts to try and make a good intro. You start to run out of ideas. I think it really does show these sort of things are starting to affect each of us being in lockdown. Start to really lose it. Not that I am. At least we're not going to be stuck inside an apartment complex when the CDC have decided to lock you in because of an unknown infection. I am, of course, talking about wreck. Or is it quarantine? I think we're going to do something different. A simple comparison to see which one hails above the best and which one flails among the rest. Compare the pair.
You get that?
Yeah.
Film everything.
Yeah, buddy, come on.
Tape everything. You hear me? Tape everything.
Wreck came out in 2007 and was directed by, forgive me if I do in fact butcher these names, but I'm not Spanish, Juan Balagueró and Paco Plaza, starring Manuela Velasco. And that's really all you need to know. And might not have earned much money at the box office, but is still to this day one of the great art director's pieces for found footage horror films. Whereas Quarantine came out just a year later. American remake. Probably because most people didn't want to go through reading subtitles. Directed by Erick Dowdle and starred Jennifer Carpenter. A quite close and yet loose remake based on the events that happened in the Spanish art house thriller. It may not have gotten a good score, but it made a lot of money. So with both of the summaries out of the way, let's kick it into our first category, story. So it shouldn't be too surprising. Two technically have the same sort of story, minus one or two little plot points. In Wreck, we see our main character working on a show called While You Were Sleeping. While the entire world gets its rest, there are good people that are working their way through to help us if any emergencies come up. And this being firefighters. See through the entire department, how they work, how they operate, what their recreational activities are, how caring they are for each other. Quarantine, the same sort of scenario, except the show was called The Night Shift. Points should go to the night shift while you were sleeping. Sounds like a disturbing pedophile act. And also demonstrates the different things that the firefighters go through. Different recreational activities, where they sleep, how they slide down their fire poles. One very good boy.
What's your role?
Now, I would love to be able to give a score out of dog, but unfortunately this isn't how this show works. With a runtime of 72 minutes, it didn't really need to go that quickly. Get straight to the point and push us right to where all the main action starts. Quarantined a little bit more time in terms of establishing character so we can care about them a bit more. Quantity over quality, there's really one sort of issue that stems out. How much time and attention they put on each of our characters. And while Wreck demonstrated a very good way of showing it, didn't have the amount of time and attention put into our main group. Point goes to Quarantine. But what is a story without the people that fill it? Our characters. Now, in both situations, technically the same amount of people. But as we move through, we see a little bit more character depth with each of the people that are involved, which ironically has the same name. But that doesn't really stop us from seeing who they are and what they do. Wreck's main character, devout, hardworking individual that has a very fun, bubbly personality that just lights up the room. She's determined, she's fiery, what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Must be commendable on how she does everything and manages to keep a level head when the shit goes down. Fierce, she is fast, and she's quick on her feet. Everyone else is so intimidated, you just can't help but love her. Quarantine, they must have looked at this and thought to themselves, maybe we can elevate the personality a bit more. Gusto, more fire.
I always like to see a lot of action, so maybe we should go into the locker room.
Or just turn her into a sleazy mess. Oh, and she screams too. Great. Does she do anything with charisma?
I can bang her by the morning.
I'll take that bet.
Okay, that doesn't really count. Let's go on to the supporting cast. I can't give points for the cameraman. We see him not a lot in Wreck and too much in Quarantine. Split it down the middle. Did a good job. One more for audio effects. Tends to react when he's even off screen. And the other person for the way that his acting ability is even when he is on screen. Our firefighters, a little bit shy. Not really sure what to do since this is a TV show and all of these people are not supposed to be actors. actors, they definitely do a good job. They were just pulled into this endeavor. Honestly, Wreck is real. Obviously, we know that this isn't the case. When it comes to something like Quarantine,
I hope that's all for wide angle lens.
I'm sorry, how am I supposed to feel for these characters when all I see bare backs and muscles, disgusting attempts to flirt with the main cast? I don't feel for these people. It's because you want me to see them get killed off a lot quicker? So it should be a no-brainer here. I'll explain it for you anyway. Point goes to Wreck. Now, with all the fill-ins and the extras, the characters, and the story that we have, there's only one way to be able to show all of this: through cinematography. Both of these are found footage movies. Gonna be a lot of camera shake, quick pacing, not very high budget. You would expect something to still have a good mentality to it. Wreck definitely delivers that claustrophobic feel. The walls just feel like they are closing in on you. There's no way to escape. You and the TV, there's nothing else around you. It felt raw. You don't really get from most found footage films. Most of the time when you got your paranormal activities, it just feels over budget, like you're watching a cinematic piece. This felt like someone's attempt to really capture the horrors to be stuck in an unfamiliar place. Definitely shown with the lighting. Dark, gritty, insane to see. There are certain moments where you can't even see and all it is just goes off audio. Even people are standing in front of the camera, more focused on what's happening in front, that we're constantly doing this. And if you get your audience to start looking around, you know they're invested. But if anything, it feels real, because that's how people would normally react. Someone has a camera and he's trying to get over it. He's gonna do anything he can to be able to do it. The one gripe with Wreck though, there are times that you do feel physically ill while you're watching it. That the amount of times that someone is shaking the goddamn camera, it's like you're being grabbed by the shoulders. We need to get the hell out of here. You don't want that for majority of your film. In Quarantine, it might still show the found footage effect, but as it's shown, it feels like a movie. That no one has the ability to be that steady with a camera, especially something that's supposed to be huge and bulky. Capture that sort of quality, it's gotta be big. It's more of a steady cam rather than a shaky cam. That sadly hurt it for me. Something as simple as seeing the camera whip around and then it's that person's cue to start talking. In Wreck, you didn't have that. The camera didn't really need to know where to go. That it wasn't all timed. It wasn't all cued. And because of that, Wreck gets the point. With everything the camera captures, there's gotta be something that puts the audience on edge. Raises the hairs on the back of their neck. Causes those goosebumps to rise and has them pulling the sheets above their head at night. The atmosphere. And when it comes to Wreck, various shadows, dark sceneries, that we know that this is an apartment complex. One of those more lower budget ones. People just trying to make ends meet or live out the rest of their days in retirement. Which goes to show how dark it is. There isn't many lights, there weren't many rooms. This was filmed inside of that building in order to make it seem a bit more realistic. The interpretation and the way they showed it definitely had an impact. Sure, they've got a few cutting corners where they have the doors closed and just have flashing lights from outside. That when it comes to lighting, this thing really knows how to get you. Unknown exactly what is going on. Quarantine definitely shows those sort of things as well. Incredible lighting, great way of showing off the effects of the different parts of the apartment complex. Quarantine was built. Cutting those corners and using smoke and mirrors, you really couldn't tell. Aside from a few little issues. A little too on the nose. Like they were put there deliberately, turning on and off when it comes to the actual camera. Just felt like this filter that was put over it to give it new movie effect. But if you wanted to really capture that grittiness, should have tried to do something else. The atmospheric horror goes to Wreck. While the camera's rolling and everyone's watching, one thing that needs to tie it all together is something that requires another one of our senses. Let's see how it sounds. Quarantine, even if it is a higher budget picture, it still deserves to be talked about first. Feels a bit more realistic with how it does things. It doesn't need to show off different sound qualities as otherworldly or out there. For example, the infected individuals. They just sound like themselves, screaming at the top of their voices. Since this is supposed to be an infection really changes you and makes you rage like an animal, it made it a lot more blood-curdling while you were watching. Sound design is perfect and on point. But in Wreck, the infected individuals don't sound like typical people. Did this virus infect their voice box? Because they all sound like they're growling for the cover of a heavy metal album. There's no screeching involved. There's no screams to be able to get it. Of course, we're going to hear a whole lot of different footsteps and crazy panicking. It's captured better in Quarantine. Real gusto for being able to do it. Plus, even down to the stunt work. When you see someone falling over the banister, you hear the pinpoint reaction of where that person cracks their skull. Yeah, I paid a lot of attention to the sound. What do you want from me? Rec might have shown a really good way of delivering you disturbing sounds, but when it comes to Quarantine, it's just that little bit richer. Point goes to Quarantine. But the one thing that's on all of your minds, the one thing that ties these entire movies together, the infection. Now, this is going to be a very close call to say. You wouldn't really expect. When it comes to both, they have their own interpretation of what exactly the infection is, how it's shown, how it's spread, and how it shows on screen. In Rec, they don't really explain what the infection is, how all these people are being affected, what exactly happens to each of them, what are the symptoms, what are the ways to show it off. Giving it a real mystery keeps you thinking the entire time, and when it is establishing you see the effects that it's caused, you can't help but run. These things look terrifying. Even right down to the way that their makeup is designed. This didn't feel like makeup. There was no CGI used in this. It was all practical effects. The very being, the way that they show this is just insane. Even though it is shaky, there are times the camera does hold on certain scenes, you just freak out. Like you're trying to close an invisible door in front of you, you gotta realize it's just a movie. With Quarantine, say what it is, show that there is no cure, try to show that there are other ways to deal with it, that it isn't as bad as people say. Until, of course, shit hits the fan. The way that they designed them just didn't feel right. Too much makeup that was put on them. And yeah, it might be gross and disgusting to see someone's bone sticking out of their body, but if it's not shown in the right way, it looks fake, then you're gonna be getting fake reaction. Those people who sit in the cinema and pretend to be scared. But when it comes to the infection, the one thing you don't want to be getting is the Spanish red eye. Point goes to Rec. Now we've come down to our final category, the one that determines whether or not your audience is going to be speaking about the movie on the ride home, or whether they're just going to forget about it, rage hard. The ending. Very tough choice. Two different interpretations. Now, without going too deep into spoilers, one had a much better interpretation of how to do this. The other was going for something, but didn't really know how to show it. In Rec, they tried determining what exactly this could have been caused by. Even down to creepy audio recordings that explain some of what's been going on. It leaves it up to the audience to fully understand exactly what it was in their own interpretation. Heaps of different news articles, things that related to what has been happening inside of this building. And with the main character being at the forefront showing this, she too doesn't really understand exactly what's going on and kept that mystery going all the way to the end. Quarantine, it gives you much more of an answer than you would expect. Gives you the practicality of what it could be. Certain answers that you didn't know you had questions for. And if anything, made a lot more sense. One thing that they go through that ties into the infection, it's all explained within the final 10 minutes of the movie. And it's a good way of showing it. It made sense for each person that was involved. Now, Rec might have made you think, but at least Quarantine gave you answers and still left you thinking about what was to come. And while Quarantine might have won this round, doesn't mean it wins the competition. Comparing the pair, Rec comes out on top. It is quite special when you're watching it. Put together on a shoestring budget, that if it was done in a Spanish setting, doesn't feel like it. And the atmosphere, the horrors, the craziness that goes down inside those walls is something special to behold. And while Quarantine is still a good frightening film, new ideas that are thrown into it doesn't beat that magic that comes with a low-budget art house feature. Now, since this isn't a typical review, it is now up to you to decide whether or not I was right or whether I was wrong. See it for yourself. If you like art house movies, don't really mind subtitles, but are there for a shocking good time, check out Rec. And if you want high budget, but still has a few disturbing scares and quite shocking moments, check out Quarantine. The main factor is up to you. When comparing the pair, there's always going to be good things, there's always going to be bad things, but at the end of the day, it's your interpretation that counts. But that being said, did you see them? Will you see them? And if so, let me know in the comments. Until then, I've been DeeJsee, and always remember, did you see it? Oh, God. What now? I thought I paid my goddamn electric bill. Where's the camera? I need to go and fix the breakers. I don't remember closing that.
Hello?